On one side, the A's connections in Las Vegas are not new. It was about 2 years ago. Dave Kaval sent out the famous or infamous tweet from the Golden Knights game, however you see it. But Las Vegas has been in the A's conversation in parallel paths for about 2 years now specifically. But on the other side of things, like lately, with the land purchase agreement, the $500 million of public tax credits that they're hoping to acquire, the 30-plus days to do so. On the other hand, it seems super expedited, dare I say, rushed. How do you see what's going on right now?
Well, a couple things. Number one, people here in Las Vegas know the process by which the Raiders Stadium was built. And that was a very official government-style, due process-style, endeavor.
Yeah.
Where you had a public board that was created specifically to look at the need of a stadium, which was definitely, yes, Las Vegas, if it was going to compete with the Orlandos and the other major cities around the country, it needed a stadium. So the answer was yes. And then the Raiders was basically the main tenant. But the point is, there was a process, there was debate, there was public discourse. Here, like you mentioned, even though the Athletics, like you said, have been around talking about the quote-unquote parallel path here in Las Vegas, there really was no rendering. There was talks of sites, but none of the sites actually ended up actually materializing.
Right.
It was this mystery 49-acre site, not too far from both the stadium and the arena here in our market,
right,
that ended up getting picked. So even though obviously the Athletics have been on the radar here in Las Vegas, it's true, for 2 years, the site itself has only been up for a public discussion for 2 weeks.
Is this a doable pace and timeline, what they're trying to accomplish here?
It's very ambitious.
Okay.
Dave Kaval told me that he wants to have an application to Major League Baseball by August.
Right.
And that would allow for an approval by the owners this fall in order to expedite a groundbreaking in 2024. And he's looking to open up the facility in 2027. Very ambitious. And, right now, literally as we talk, Brody, the state legislators, various committee members, various legislative leaders are talking with Dave Kaval and his roster of lobbyists about, like you mentioned, the tax credits and this sports and entertainment district. And I'm sure one of the questions will be, would this district be able to generate enough revenues to pay back the bonds that they'd like Clark County to float up to $500 million? So it's a very compressed time period indeed.
Is it your belief that the $500 million in tax credits could be there from Nevada? Is this something that's there or not, or is it up for good consideration or not? How do you see that part of it?
I think it'll be discussed vigorously. I just don't know how much of the $500 million ceiling will be realized. Something to keep in mind, when I talked with our Clark County Commissioner, Michael Neff, he had mentioned the Athletics can ask for anything they want. Doesn't mean they're going to get it.
Sure.
So Clark County, I think, is kind of, they're kind of putting their heels in the ground too about whether they're going to be on board. Keep in mind, there will have to be a legislative act, if you will,
right,
to create the tax district, create the funding mechanism. But at the end of the day, Clark County here in the Metro Vegas area will be the fiscal agent, and they will be responsible and charged with floating the bonds. Keep in mind, as a little anecdote to this, the Raiders Stadium kind of popped up as a point of conversation because when we were going through the COVID shutdown and there was no hotel room tax income flowing into the stadium, the Raiders Stadium repayment process.
That's right.
Clark County had to not once but twice tap contingency funds to the tune of about $13 million each time. That scared a lot of people.
Sure.
And Clark, I'm sure that is in the back of the mind of Clark County commissioners.
So the other part of this is the $500 million that they're seeking and the way that it needs to come and the timeline, the time crunch that it's under. Now, the legislative session goes about 30 more days. I think it's 33.
Correct.
And we saw the Nevada Independent reporting yesterday that multiple people within the legislature have said, we would like to accomplish this in the regular session. Now, there could be a special session. Like, I believe with the Raiders, you'd know best. The Raiders had a special session to revisit this with the legislature, which only meets, once every other year for 120 days.
That's true.
This is a really hard time crunch here for the A's. But there is a possibility that this could be handled later, although it does seem like they want to get this done. They want to try and hammer this out in the next month. But they've also said this is something that should have been proposed a couple weeks ago.
Absolutely. What's interesting is that, the Athletics were talking with the city of Oakland for, a few years now.
Yep.
I don't know why at the same, Dave Cavill talked about the quote unquote parallel path in Las Vegas. Well, this should have been discussed 2 years ago. This should have been started 2 years ago. And we should have had the due process and the public meetings and the sessions. And that stuff should have been happening here in Las Vegas as well, instead of just this kind of quickie process that we're going right now. Again, I go back to the Raiders situation where even though, for the most part, you knew it was going to happen. Brian Sandoval, who's the governor at the time, he was in favor of the $750 million a subsidy to help the construction bill of the stadium. The governor was on board. They also had Sheldon Adelson, who was paying all the lobbyists to make sure that legislatively the Senate bill would be passed. There wasn't really a big mystery, I got to tell you, Brody. That was pretty much a done deal. And true, Sandoval did call a special session, and the legislature approved it in 2016. It really was not. There was really no mystery to it. This is like a really very different situation. The public here in Las Vegas has not seen much details. There's not a rendering. Cavill told me 2 weeks ago they don't even have a design architect on board here. And it's interesting that they've cut off conversations with the city of Oakland because right now it's only the state of Nevada they're talking with in Las Vegas and Clark County. So, there isn't another community to play off of at this point. It's Las Vegas or bust.